A music. Ever pondered why the initial stages of our existence etch the most profound impressions, even when memories fade into the haze? Why do some individuals, despite their best efforts, bear an unseen burden in their tone, their decisions, and their navigation of life? This burden usually carries a label, one seldom voiced. It's the devastation of a shattered early life, not stemming from one isolated incident, but from barren, fractured ground where growth was intended to flourish. Early years ought to serve as a haven, a fertile plot where security and affection enable one to reach for the sun. Yet for countless others, it's anything but. Rather, it transforms into a war zone of unfulfilled desires, quiet where solace was due, voids where connection should have thrived. Remarkably, we only grasp years afterward the extent to which those gaps continue to mold us. Music. Research reveals a truth we frequently ignore. A youngster's brain evolves at its quickest pace during those opening years. Connections in the neural network solidify depending on treatment received, words heard, the reliability of embraces, reassurances, or dismissals. When a young one's requirements go repeatedly unaddressed, their emerging psyche adjusts accordingly. However, such adjustments exact a price. Perpetual vigilance, challenges in relying on people, an internal dialogue murmuring, "You're insufficient." These go beyond mere emotions. They're etched into biology. Consider the vulnerability of youth. They have no say in their birthplace, no influence over parental dispositions, no power to select their surroundings, the turmoil or tranquility they receive. Still, those beyond control factors form the filter for viewing reality. A devastated upbringing frequently involves shouldering another's unresolved scars. It entails adopting tempests that weren't yours originally. But hold on a moment. This discussion avoids framing every tough early experience as an irreversible doom. Humanity possesses remarkable endurance, that's beyond question. Nevertheless, endurance isn't boundless. Picture demanding a tender sprout to thrive robust and lofty amid poisoned earth. Indeed, certain plants will strain skyward, curving to the light, but numerous will harbor distortions in their stems, marks on their limbs, and anchors that never gained firm footing. That's the essence of a shattered childhood manifested in people. Adults who mature outwardly, yet remain unripe within. Among the most neglected facets of this sorrow is its invisibility to outsiders. Externally, one could seem entirely capable. They might chuckle appropriately, arrive punctually at jobs, perhaps even establish their own household. Yet internally, the resonances of youth persist. Investigations in child development psychology indicate that kids deprived of steady emotional care frequently mature into grown-ups exhibiting what's termed insecure bonding. Thus, even later in life, connections might resemble treading unstable terrain. Reliance seems breakable. Closeness appears hazardous. And the cruelest element? They commonly fault themselves, unaware that origins dwell in occurrences well outside their grasp. It's agonizing to contemplate, yet many grown-up struggles, doubting one's worth, endless accommodation of others, struggles with limits, or ceaseless chasing of outside approval, often linked to those crucial periods. When youth discovers affection requires striving for, they devote lifetimes to attaining what ought to flow unbound. When youth absorbs that emotions burden others, they evolve into grown-ups who mute their own voices, even as quiet inflicts pain. Yet, here's the contradiction. Those with demolished early lives typically downplay their anguish. They remark, "It wasn't so terrible. Some endured more." They convince themselves of exaggeration, insisting history belongs buried. But the physique tallies the toll subtly. In the constriction of your torso at raised tones, in the unease during tranquil spells, as serenity seems alien. In the reluctance to embrace benevolence sans doubt. To fully comprehend the sorrow of a demolished youth, one must recognize the chasm it forges, the divide twixt potential and reality, not centered on one stab of hurt, but the buildup of minor voids. The untold lullabies at night, the withheld consolation, the unspoken boosts. Such voids morph into lingering shades into maturity. But why does this count? Why dredge up the unalterable? Because recognition marks the initial stride to liberation. To dismiss youth's import is to reject the foundations of personal evolution. Brain science demonstrates that early encounters literally construct the mind's framework. Injury, oversight, and volatility configure the mind for endurance over expansion. And yet, without grasping this truth, we might confuse enduring habits with inherent traits. In reality, these are adaptive tactics forged from sheer need. Think about it. A kid raised amid endless uncertainty picks up on the tiniest cues, a shift in someone's voice, a flicker across their face, the bang of a closing door. They turn into constant watchers, forever on alert for threats. In grown-up life, that same watchfulness can come across as worry, endless rumination, or trouble unwinding. It's not their innate nature to fret. Their wiring was conditioned to endure an environment that always seemed hostile. Take another example. A youngster overlooked, whose wants go unmet. They figure out that dodging letdowns means quitting the requests entirely. As adults, this could manifest as hesitation, uncertainty about seeking support, or a sense that they're not worthy of attention, not from any frailty, but because back then, reaching out yielded nothing. The real heartbreak isn't just that early hurts happen. It's how they linger quietly for decades, frequently overlooked. They turn into the unspoken narratives folks enact without knowing, looping through old loops, undermining chances, shying from affection, even as they yearn for it intensely. Without shining a light on them, these remnants can ripple across family lines. But we need to tread lightly here. It's tempting to sink into hopelessness, viewing damaged early years as inescapable cages. They're not. Burdensome, sure, but once comprehended, that load can be shouldered in fresh ways. The very studies revealing trauma's impact on the mind also highlight another key: neuroplasticity. The brain's capacity to adjust, to reshape pathways, to mend itself well into later life. So, a shattered youth isn't the story's close. It's the launch of an ongoing journey to recover what's missing, mend what's fractured, and offer yourself the nurturing guidance you lacked as a kid. Even so, the sorrow lingers, since no amount of mending fully dispels the lingering sense of alternate paths. The joy that went unspoken, the steady security never known, the purity stripped away prematurely. Recovery might blunt the sharpness, yet it can't rewind a stolen early life. And maybe that's why those who've borne such loads often gain profound insight. They evolve into personal thinkers, pondering the tough queries others sidestep. They cultivate a compassion that cuts to the core, born from grasping what happens without it. Challenges persist, but amid the fight lies a remarkable attunement to existence. The sorrow of a wrecked beginning is that it steals away the fresh starts one merited. Yet the victory, if we dare name it so, is how many emerge from the ruins with a hard-earned insight, an insight that murmurs, suffering might mold you, but it needn't lock you in. Childhood suffering has this elusive quality. Snap your arm young, and folks swarm with aid. They spot the plaster, scribble on it, recall your ordeal. But when your core cracks in youth, amid sparse warmth, missing gentleness, or love doled out sparingly, there's no bandage for the heart. No outward sign alerts the world to this young one's anguish. Being unseen like that, it slips past notice, not only from outsiders, but from the child too. What cuts deepest in this sorrow is how youngsters accept their reality as normal. A kid in deprivation doesn't think, quote 3-3. They conclude, quote 3-4. One amid turmoil doesn't label it, I'm caught in disorder. They just adjust. They construct their world around the unrest, blind to its rarity. Then, entering maturity, they're stunned by their stumbles where others glide smoothly. That's why countless grown-ups from broken pasts harbor quiet self-blame. They wonder, why the lack of assurance? Why the mistrust? Why does closeness terrify? Unaware they're hauling an outdated plan, sketched by unchosen events. Stick to a flawed guide long enough, and disorientation hits from all sides. Experts in the mind often mention the inner child. It may sound fanciful, but it's starkly tangible. Far from abstract, it's the archive of initial recollections, emotions, and worldview lessons embedded in every grown person. When that inner part gets dismissed, ridiculed, or weighed down too soon, it stays stuck at the hurt's timestamp. Picture reaching 35 while harboring a 7-year-old inside who still feels unlovable. That's the hidden strain so many shoulder unknowingly. The sorrow stretches further, infiltrating bonds, work, even how one raises their own. A person from a marred youth might unwittingly replay the cycles they vowed to break, not by choice, but because history subtly authors their now. Without realizing it, people from tough early years might pull away, live in fear, try to control everything, or bend over backward to please others. These patterns all stem from the lessons absorbed in childhood. Science backs up this harsh reality. Investigations into adverse childhood experiences, commonly known as ACEs, reveal that the greater the hardships a kid faces, the higher the chances of facing issues down the line with managing feelings, bodily well-being, and even how long they live. The link is crystal clear. Events from those early days echo through an entire existence. Still, despite all we know, society tends to brush it aside, assuming kids are tough enough to just snap back. Sure, toughness is real, but it's not a shield against damage. Each wound, even the ones you can't see, leaves its mark. And maybe the saddest part is how kids so often turn the blame inward. A young one won't conclude, "My guardian can't give me affection." Instead, they decide, "I guess I'm not worthy of it." They won't figure their parent is preoccupied, stressed out, or in their own battles. No, they assume the problem lies with themselves. Those childlike deductions solidify into lifelong convictions. Consider how many grown-ups carry this silent assurance. I'm insufficient. They push relentlessly, succeeding, acting out roles, seeking approval, all to patch a hole that wasn't their fault to begin with. Or they hide away, believing that staying out of sight keeps them safe from more pain. These aren't just odd traits. They're coping mechanisms formed in lonely rooms where cries went unanswered, in schools where their words fell on deaf ears, in homes where affection came with strings attached. But here's the twist yet again. While broken early lives are heartbreaking, they can spark remarkable abilities. Abilities honed through quiet endurance, through suffering, through sheer persistence. Folks who weather those storms frequently gain an acute awareness of others' feelings. They turn into caring listeners, deeply understanding souls, picking up on nuances that elude most. They spot the little things because they once had to. They shield people because they lacked that protection themselves. These gifts come with a mix of joy and sorrow. They spring from ground that was never meant to be so unforgiving. Yet they thrive, molding individuals in meaningful ways. Recovery starts not by wiping away history, but by reframing it, by seeing those old childhood ideas as guesses from a kid with limited perspective, not absolute facts. The grown-up's job is to carefully unravel those notions and swap them for kinder, truer ones. To gaze at that younger self and affirm, "You're worthy of love. You're not overwhelming. You're just a little one needing what all kids need." Recovery isn't a straight line. Certain days bring forward momentum, while others drag you back into familiar shadows. But that's woven into the journey. Thanks to the brain's neuroplasticity, transformation is possible no matter your age. The body's stress responses can relearn trust, even if they missed it early on. And while you can't go back to redo those initial pages, you can author fresh ones as an adult. Pages filled with self-kindness, solid bonds, and sharper insight. Here's perhaps the strongest insight. A damaged start in life isn't a permanent verdict. It does leave traces. It does take away something precious. But those bearing such traces often cultivate a profound empathy that quietly enriches the world. They've felt what it's like to be overlooked, so they make a point to show up fully. They've known the sting of being ignored, so they commit to truly hearing. They've experienced feeling insignificant, and thus they work to help others feel valued, and in that, purpose emerges, not by denying the hurt ever occurred, but by reshaping it, by converting the burden of what's gone into energy for building anew, by grasping that though your origins are fixed, your outcomes remain in your hands. If these ideas resonate with you, hold this close. Your challenges aren't evidence of frailty, but of resilience. Each hurdle isn't a flaw in you, but a testament to what you've withstood. And even if the early years you needed never came, you can grant yourself a different path today. Gentleness, understanding, grace, to step into the role of the supportive presence, the warm hold, the secure haven you've always craved. The sorrow of a shattered youth is undeniable, but so is the chance for renewal. Not by deleting yesterday, but by repeatedly opting to show up anew right now. To cherish the kid you used to be, not by hushing their story, but by finally tuning in. Because ultimately, existence isn't defined by flawless starts. It's shaped by what we build amid the flaws, and at times, those who navigated the deepest shadows end up shining the brightest light. Music,